when we got to meet them, they took us to the bar and got us very, very drunk on what they called heart starters, which is large gin and tonics. And we ended up in a sort of rather bleary way, still thinking they were going to do our play, but in fact they were secretly just testing us out to see if we were material for writing Doctor Who. And they said, we'd like to do it, Doctor Who. And I said, yes, fine, sure. Now, how about these tanks? And then so it went on like that, and I kept misunderstanding what they were talking about, and finally then saying, would you like to do a Doctor Who? And say yes. And then suddenly it came to me. I thought, my God, they've asked if we would like to write a Doctor Who. And for me, that was a big thing, because I'd watched it from the very beginning, the first episode in 1963. And then it took a whole year for us to be hammered into shape to be able to do Doctor Who. We wrote in storylines by the dozen, and they just kept saying, no, we can't do that, we're not MGM, we can't do that, we can't. And I suddenly realised two things. One, that they're a very, very low budget show. I thought it was a big budget show. And that you really have to knuckle down and write it in the format that it was made in, and that you cannot go outside those boundaries. And we were sort of quite naive about that sort of thing. But there we are. I then had finally we went from a 7-parter to a 6-parter, then to a 4-parter, which was put out as Claws of Axos, and it's quite successful, really. The Doctor is the Doctor, as always, but I mean, there are certain things. I mean, I preferred, if I had to prefer, I'd say Tom was better, because he had a kind of uh, there's a kind of something about him which you knew that he believed every word, whereas I felt John Pertwee was more of an actor, perhaps a bit of a comedian as well, and a comedian trying to be serious, which was, I mean, he was very good. I can't fault it, but I mean, there's just a slight difference. I preferred Tom to write for, because you knew exactly how he'd say the line, and and once you got a good story and you got everything working, it was I think all the ones we did with Tom were fantastic. Um, well, there's one particular thing, of course, is that we created the little doggy K9, who became a companion, and has kept his fame right until the present day. And it was amazing to us that they took it on. We didn't know that they would take him on as a constant companion, and we thought it would be, just on the one show. So that was an extra bonus, and it was a terrific thing that he was accepted, and he was well thought of by the fans. I mean, some of the fans hated him, obviously, but it was very handy for the show, because the Doctor, whoever he might be, had an extra person to use in his sort of armory of what to do in terrible situations. You got the K9 situation as well, and the only problem that they found was that he was a bit cumbersome and would knock things down. And also, Tom didn't like him particularly, because he either had to kneel down or lie down to talk to him, uh, and he quite often made a few expletives about dog. It's a rollicking good series, and we're working towards getting a second series together. It's just that there's a different attitude in Australia. We made it in Australia, and they didn't have the same impetus as you get here, I think. But nonetheless, I mean, I've heard no really terrible criticisms of it, and I think it looks good. And of course, K9 is regenerated so that he can fly, so the actors don't have to lie down and kneel down, and he can come up to their faces and talk to their face and whisk off and become a real sort of superhero type character. Well, I quite often get asked to do the kind of disc to go with the DVD that's coming out, to do the sort of chat thing with whoever was the Doctor and whoever was companions, and you then have to look through it about 3 times before you go there to answer the questions. And I was amazed. I wasn't at all embarrassed, and I was actually, well, as I say, amazed at some of the dialogue that was there, and I thought, God, I mean, there's a Sontaran experiment, and it's just two smaller characters, but they're talking the most incredible philosophical stuff, you know, and it's all there, but it all works as well. That's the interesting thing. Um, we have an airplane going over. So, you know, I am not at all. I mean, obviously there's a few little special effects which look a bit wobbly, and some of before there was CGI, you had to use color separation overlay, and that was never quite right. You always had a silver line around the character, and the backgrounds weren't as quite tightly done. But on the last one I did, which was Garden of no, sorry, uh, Nightmare of Eden, they improved it quite some, and they did this kind of mangled, smashed spaceship in CSO, color separation overlay, which looked very, very good. I was very pleased with it, and they had improved. I mean, I'm a Terence Dix, the script editor, would say that's because of you. That is there to find a new machine to do what you suggested in your script. Dave had finished, and I thought, well, that's the last Doctor Who we do. And then I was working at the BBC on Shoestring, and I was in the next door office to the Doctor Who people, and they were going around saying, "Oh, well, we need a low budget show," and I said, "Oh, I'll do one for you," and they said, "All right then," and so I did. I mean, and I made it as low budget because I knew how to do it. I could make it really low budget and not use terribly expensive scenes, that sort of thing, and the best thing about it was that I had. Oh my God, I've forgotten his name. The Hitchhiker's Guide man.
Douglas Adams.
That's the most important thing about Nightmare of Eden is that Douglas Adams was the script editor, and we got on like a house on fire. We really worked very hard on the script, and I think it sort of became very polished, and you know, I'm delighted with it, really. I think it stopped because everybody thought it'd run its course. I mean, you know, the fans were beginning to diminish, and the doctors were beginning to get a little tired looking, I thought, and so it had a sort of rest, but it never. The fan base just kept bubbling along, and so there was always a pressure to try and bring Doctor Who back. But when I went with my partner Paul Tams with the new K9 idea to see the BBC, they were they said, you know, this is silly. I mean, it's gone, it's finished, it's over, you know, and so we had to look elsewhere to try and produce it, and that's how we ended up going to Australia. But suddenly, just as we were about to do our deal in Australia, up over the horizon rides Doctor Who Mark II, after 7 years of not being and this was because Russell T Davies was a great Doctor Who fan, and he just wanted to bring it back in a different format, and he persuaded the BBC that it would be a big thing, and it has worked out. It's done brilliantly well. You know, it may be getting a bit long in the tooth now, I think, but I think that they understand that, and they're doing less shows. They're doing one at Christmas, one at spring, one in autumn, sort of, or one in summer special, which is about right, I think. So it keeps people waiting. But I mean, for the next show, and builds interest, and builds sort of you know, excitement to see what's coming up next. But it is a long saga. 50 years is a long time to go on, and it's amazing. I think it's probably the only program in the world that's done that. I mean, the only other thing I think of is the Mousetrap. It's run for 60 years. Trevor, who played Shoestring, had many layers to him. He was had a mental breakdown, and that he didn't know how to what to do in life. He was kind of at a loose end, and he sort of drifted into this business of being the private ear, which is then again that was a real hit. In fact, that it was a local radio station, and it worked perfectly. I mean, what a lovely way to get into new jobs is through people doing a phone in, you know, and I mean, the stories were very good. I mean, as a script editor on it, I mean, I was with Robert Banks Stewart, the producer. We had a lot of work to do, and I think that it shows, and that the scripts are good. and the second series is even better. But it was a great thing to work on, and it's for a short while was the most watched show in the UK. Bergerac was again interesting in that he was an island policeman, and so you could involve things in France, you could involve things in England, and there's an intriguing kind of hierarchy within Jersey itself, which then he could try to he could feel neutral in a situation where there was political power pushing one way and his girlfriend pushing the other way, whichever. Um, and again, we've got this fantastic background. I mean, the island is beautiful. Lots of situations to arise there from holiday making, from all that sort of stuff, and people loved it because they'd been there at some time and they just loved to see it and get the feel of the place. Then I suddenly got this phone call from Dave Sproxton at Aardman, who I knew from the days of when I was at HTV, and I'd always admired their work. And they said they got this new man, and he'd done a cartoon called A Grand Day Out, and they wanted to do another one. But the producer at BBC, who were going to show buy it, said that he might need a bit of help on the writing, and they chose me. Maybe because I was just down the road, but it was fantastic. I got to know Nick, and we got on very well, and we have ever since. And then we went into doing a film, and we somehow hammered out the wrong trousers, and I was absolutely amazed at it when I saw the finished thing. It was I was, as I say, amazed. There's nothing I could say more than that. I was, and. Then I didn't even think about prizes or anything like that. Then suddenly they said it's won an Oscar. And I said, oh, what? I was in the. I remember. So I was in the dentist, and I still couldn't get it clear in my head. And she said, "What are you doing now?" Da 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 da. And I said, "Well, I just wrote this thing." And it's just won an Oscar. I said, oh, that's fantastic. And then in the next room, a director that I knew was being treated as well. He said, well done, Bob, well done.